Hello again, this is UML Operator. All right, and welcome back. Yeah, in this session, we're going to be talking about code documentation. Now, I'm going to spend about 7 minutes on an 8+ hour conversation. Don't worry, we're going to go through this in detail in other episodes, but I just want to touch on the subject, demonstrate how to produce code documentation, and then we'll wrap up by just printing a couple of reports to show the outcome of what we're doing from scratch. Now, you can reverse engineer existing code and work on documentation, or you can start from scratch. In this case, we're going to do it from the very beginning. So thanks very much, and let's get started. When starting in design, it's best to start with your packages and namespaces. And as this includes your tables, code design, and even your UI web design. From here, we're going to go in and start adding in and building a table first, using the nomenclature, the conventions that are proper, as well as the proper technologies. At this point, we can start adding in our attributes, only the columns first. So we're adding in our columns here. Now we're defining each column size, shape, type, etc. as we move through. Be sure to select not null columns at the start. This helps you understand what's required and what's not required. Have a productive workspace, all right? This makes it easier for documentation, adding notes and descriptions to columns, as well as other types that are within your table design, all right? Now build a deployment view. This is very critical. You can do this at the beginning before you get started, or you can do it after your table design. But at some point you have to understand your execution environments, your nodes, and everything involved within the deployment of the data as well as the code we're going to be working on next. In your deployment view, you're going to add your connections. It's very important that you understand the connectivity between your nodes and your execution environments. So do the best you can at the start. You can always change later. Add in descriptions to each one of the connections, at least at a high level, title level. And then put in notes. Deployment views are usually a good place because readers are looking at this to understand the roles and responsibilities of every node and execution environment within your deployment view. As you're working through your deployment view, you're going to describe each node and execution environment. This includes the connections between these particular elements within your deployment views. Next, let's dive into our code design. Build out your packages in your namespaces and get them as close to the code repository naming conventions as possible. With our packages set, let's start modeling our classes. So we're using class elements here, we're using the proper naming convention, and we're making sure that we're modeling the classes in the proper namespaces. It's very important to also use the right element. Remember to show the connectivity between the elements that you have here and use the proper connections to explain how your code interacts or connects with each other. When ready on your classes, start adding your attributes first. Just the attributes. We'll worry about the details later as we're going in. So we go down, we start adding the attributes. They may turn into properties, but we'll add the details later after we've defined our attribute. Now we're going to get into our operations, and it's very important to work on your parameters and return types as you're going through, because this is related to your data that you're going to be using within your software environment. After that, we're going to go in and make sure that we have the proper software language so that we can configure those operations correctly during design. Again, it's important to use the proper naming conventions during design. This ensures that you're aligned with your development teams as you're working through code design. Add notes, operations, properties at the attribute level as much as possible for documentation. Pick the right code language. This helps you align your attributes, your types, and everything related to your code with that technology. For example, we're using task in this case, which is aligned with the ASP.NET Core framework. And we want to make sure that we're defining our code using the right libraries as we're going forward. Here's an example of us not choosing C# and not getting the attributes. So we made a correction, and now the type is available for proper design. As you're going through modeling, make sure you're not messy. Organize your elements so that they're easy to understand and that you can properly add operations, properties, attributes, make the necessary notes as you're moving through design on each class element within your diagrams. Choosing the right stereotypes, the right language, helps us set up our properties more effectively. Now we're ready to define our interfaces. As we go through, we're adding the proper attributes, we're adding the proper operations, as well as properties necessary to implement our APIs. Be sure to set parent definitions as you're going through. We have an understanding of implementation and generalization. This makes our code easier to understand as they're related. Because we're using a model view controller design pattern, let's go ahead and add in our controller, necessary part to the implementation of this software platform. So as we're going through, we're basically defining the attributes, the operations, the parameters, as well as choosing the right types, going through the app controller design in this particular implementation. Next, we're going to define our article class, as well as enumeration that's necessary for product, service, and support. So as we're going through here, we're basically making sure that all of our properties align and everything aligns as far as the code language that we're using. We want to verify that. We'll continue to build out our article class, and eventually you're going to see that this aligns as an entity class with our table and database. Let's go in and bring in our table element into this model to see and validate that everything's aligned. In model-driven development, we can reuse the elements that we just created, in this case, the articles class, to use as parameters in our class elements. A powerful feature in Spark's Enterprise Architect is linked documents. You do not want to put too much content or comments in your code. Linked documents allow you to embed or link documents for reporting purposes, and we'll talk more about this in a moment. Wow, that was a mouthful. So I covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time, and we'll have other videos that are going to dive down into the subject matter a little closer so that you understand it. All right, so what we want to do is we want to produce some reports. But first, let's look at the code. Let's generate or stub out the code so that we can see what we've added so far. And you can do this at any time you want. So let's demo that next. So what I do in our file repository is I create a folder structure here for everyone to work offline or online. In this case, we have a design folder, and in here we have a folder called pseudocode. This allows the design architect, whoever that is, application, solution, chief architect, just to dump views of their generated class code. So this is all C#, has the proper extensions. So let's go ahead to this particular element. We go to develop, and then we go to generate, and then we go to generate single class. You could do all of the selected classes if you had multiple classes selected, but we're just going to do one class at a time. So we select our diagram, we select our element. You could certainly do it from the side. If I hit Alt-G, I go right to the element within my browser. I could certainly do this from here. All right, just got to make sure you're on the element or in the namespace. Then we go to develop, generate, single element, and then we deposit or target the element, generate it to the proper namespace, in this case, pseudocode, and we're going to take the name of the item, article controller. Because we choose the proper language, it defaults to C# and adds the proper extension, and we can hit generate, and it will generate this code for us. Before I generate, let me close out and show you something else very important. You see up here in source code, synchronize. So you can synchronize selected elements or entire package. Know the difference between generate and synchronize, because your developers may be working on the source from their IDE, their integrated development environment, and making changes. So you want to synchronize, if that's the case, with your element first. Otherwise, if you generate, you're going to step on anything they did in that particular namespace or package. Now, most likely the developers are working in their development namespaces. They're writing real code to their development environment, and they're not playing around with pseudocode within your namespace, your folder. However, you may let them come in here, use your pseudocode to use their IDE because they may not have Sparks Enterprise Architect or wish to use a modeling tool. They wish to use their own development environment. So very careful to understand the difference between generate and synchronize. So let's make sure we're in development. We're on the element we want to generate. We're going to go to generate in the source code and generate single class. We're in the right area and namespace. That's very important. Never generate code directly to your development environment. Keep them separate. Have two different namespaces for what you're doing. All right. So when we're going to make sure we're using the proper target language, it should default out if you have it configured correctly. Let's go ahead and hit generate, and it's done that fast. Now, if we select the element and we hit function key 12, F12, while we're on the element, we'll go to code. Let me go to my other layout, my common layout, to give me a more productive workspace. There we go. And this is the code that we had just generated. All right. Now, one of the things you have to be cognizant of is that Sparks is using these libraries, all right? Kind of the default libraries for C#. It is not necessarily all of the libraries that we're going to use when we're implementing or developing this code. And we'll talk more in detail around model-driven development and ensuring you're configuring your development, your modeling development environment to utilize all of the libraries that are necessary for such development. So this is what the development team is going to see. And one of the complaints that I get all the time is that, well, I don't need this, and I don't need all of this documentation. They'll tell me that this is too much. I don't want all of this in here, all of this tagging. And we'll have a debate and go through it, but they may skim it down and they will make adjustments to the pseudocode as they're moving forward. They may add in specific API or RESTful tagging, and they may make other changes to the source code in this pseudocode example. So over on the right side here, we have the actual development environment of what the team is working on. And you can see that the libraries that they're using here are more than what Sparks implements or uses. So they built out a namespace for API models, for the models themselves. They added in HTTP as part of the ASP.NET Core framework and more, right? So they made some changes. They removed the header, and they made some changes in the notes to simplify it. Now you can have this debate if you wish to have with them, but when you're going through here, that all developers, they say, hey, my code is my documentation. I'm not going to use a UML tool to document my code. So what do you do in this particular case? Here's where we introduce linked document. You see this little icon here? This means there is a linked document. You can also use the shortcut key, Control, Alt, and D, and it will bring up a linked document that explains what libraries we need to use in design and other more detailed documentation that you would not necessarily need to include in your code documentation as you're going through an element. And we go up here, let me just bring up properties. Actually, let me bring up features. I'm just going to embed it in the properties. So in this particular case, we can add in notes and to each one of the elements, or we can add them into the properties, the attributes, or the class elements themselves. We can add in notes. So if I go over here to notes, let me bring notes up and I'll put it here in the middle. We can go through and we can add notes here. So if I put a note in at any one of these particular levels, it will show up in the documentation. So in this case, I've added a note here that they're asking me either to make much shorter, just say search method or search method, but keep it very short. They may constrain you to a certain amount of character lengths, but you still want all of this detail. Well, you can use linked documents to add in that detail that's necessary. Another way to get to linked documents is through the Explore group. That's on every tab. We're on the development tab. You go to portals and you go to Windows, and this pops up, and we go down here to document or properties. And then down here, you see document. We're going to go ahead and select it. And the window popped up here for me. It could pop up for you any other place. And so when you select an element, you can see and even manage your linked document content here. The other thing you can do is if you don't want the element to show up, let's bring it back up again. You can hit this hamburger here and you can do other things, including remove, delete the linked document. So if you inadvertently added a linked document and you're going, what's this icon mean? You can remove it here, and I'm certainly not going to do that because I have a linked document I don't want to remove. Let's go ahead and close this, and then let's come up here, right click, and we're going to hide portals. We don't want to see it. You can certainly pin it so you can pop it out. You've learned how to do that in this channel. We're just going to hit hide and clean up our environment. We're going to print a report just on the app controller class element that's here. So we're going to select what we want to report on, or just be inside the diagram namespace, and hit function key 8. And when we do that, you can see we're in controllers right up here, the package. Same thing would happen if you were on the element. Hit function key 8, and we're on the app controller element. All right. So you'll get two different reports. Let's first not select the element and run a report. So we're going to hit function key 8. And then we're going to use model report out of the canned selections that Sparks has given us for reporting. All right, so model report. I'm going to go ahead and select that, use it. It names it after the package controller. So the only thing in this package, let's see here. What's the only thing in this package? Let's close. Controller is just this class. All right, so we're going to bring it up. Leave everything that we had set. We're going to hit generate and take a look at this. All right. So it went through the entire package and gave us the entire package intelligence that we put in. So we have the controller package described. We have the diagram described in the notes. And then we have the actual elements. There's only one element, the controller, and we get the linked document. And that's what this template looks like, all right? And you can always, if you're out here and you hit F8 and we're on the same namespace, you can always open the template, say, hey, what's included in this? And if you understand how to read the report writer, this is everything that it's looking for, relevant to the elements and how to configure the template. And you learned how to do reporting in previous videos on reporting. I'll try to include links in this video. Let's look at a different element this time. We're going to go over to models and let's choose our interface and report on this. So we select it, we hit F8. It knows that it's on an element. It's not on the entire package and is going to print a report on everything. It's only going to model report. This is the template we're using for the interface. It gives us the name in the reports repository that it remembers that we're going to go to. Let's go ahead and generate this, right? So it's generating the report. Let's view it. So in this case, it's only reporting on the element, the description of the element, a linked document, And then you have your relationships with any intelligence that you applied as we're going down, your attributes and any intelligence that you happen to write for the associations or the connectors, and then the operations. All right, that's all it has. All right, let's close this and run another report on this element. So we're going to hit function key 8 when we're on the element we want to report on. Let's look at another canned report. I want to use audit report detailed generate, and this just gives you a little bit more. I'm not going to spend time looking at the template and let you do that, but it's going through, it's on the element. Here's the intelligence that we had on the element and the operations. All right, they're only operations here, and any intelligence that we added. Let's go ahead and close this and then go back to this model diagram, and we're only focused on the interface iArticle repository that we developed. If we want to look at the source code, we certainly could look at the pseudocode that was published, and this is pretty close to the going to be the source code. It's just missing some using libraries. All right, so what we're going to do is let's close these and go back to model, and we're going to select this and we're going to hit F12. Look at the code, got it up, very nice. Now let's hit F8 to produce a report on this interface element. And in this time, we're going to use our own custom template called model design. And let's take a look at it. So basically, I used the model report, and then I made some modifications to it, either font style and so on, but I want to include tag values. So I appended it down at the bottom of the report. Let's go look and see what this is going to look like in report form, whether you're going to RTF or you're going to Word. So we've got model design. We're going to step on this report right here for article controller. Let's go ahead and generate. Matter of fact, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and generate this one. I want to show you the difference with and without the documentation that the development team wants. Let's go ahead and hit view. So now when we're looking at this, we have the controller, we have a description of the controller, the intelligence, we have the linked document, and then we have the attributes, we have the associations, we have the operations, and then all the way down at the bottom, we have our tag values that we extended from the class element so that we could better understand this particular element. So when we're looking at this, and we happen to be looking at properties, and we go to tag values, we've defined some tag values here that are showing up in this report. Let's go ahead and close this. We'll do one more. This time we're going to go back over here. We're going to use our interface again. We're going to hit function key 8 to bring up the generate documentation. We're on the template we want to use. It is a custom template, and this time it took the name of the element, I for interface article repository, and that's a report it's going to generate in our reports repository. Let's hit generate, right? And then it's done. We're going to hit view, and now we have the interface, description of the interface at the element, the linked document, but it still doesn't have all of the intelligence. So you can do this as often as you want. In this case, we wanted to describe the element, each one of the attributes, the associations here and the operations. We followed the recommendations of the development team to keep our description of each one of these operations as short as possible. And then we will come up and expand on that documentation information within a linked document. You see the icon. This one doesn't have a linked document. Neither does this one. Neither does this one. All right. And again, it's very simple to add a linked document. You simply select linked document. You choose the template that you want. There's a lot of canned templates for linked document, a lot. And you can create your own custom, and we don't have any custom for linked documents. We're going to go with none. We're going to hit OK. And then when we come back over and look at this element, it now has that icon next to it. So now when I right click on this, I can go down to link document and it brings up the link document that we started. All right. Now, if you want to remove this icon, there's not a lot of help out there, either in Sparks or the internet that's very helpful. So it's very simple to do that. You go to portals. We're going to go to Windows again. We have document or properties rather. I keep saying document open. Document within properties, and then you can come up here and you can hit delete linked document. All right. Are you sure? Yes. And it is gone. All right. All right. We're going to wrap up here. I get asked this quite a bit. Hey, UML operator, I have this icon. How do I get rid of it? And I show them how to get rid of it. And then they look over here, still have the window up. There's nothing in it. And they go, it's still there. No, it's not there. All right. So if you just go ahead and close this, it's not there. It is gone. If you right click on this and you select link document, yep, you're going to put another link document and now you know how to remove them. All right. So I wanted to cover this. I got asked in another video to talk about code documentation. This is a huge subject. So we're going to be doing a whole series on documenting code that is going to break everything down a little bit lower detail. And I hope to get to that soon. We have some other things in the queue we need to get to, but I wanted to get this video out as soon as possible. So thanks very much for watching. And until the next episode, happy modeling.